welcome. In the last 2-3 lectures, we were discussing about definition of embedded system and components of embedded system hardware and other 2-3 topics, challenges of embedded system. Today we'll try to discuss about design metrics. Metrics means some kind of measurements. Okay, what are the measurements involved in while designing embedded system? What are the different metrics? The things, metrics means you have some kind of measurements. Metrics comes from the word measurement. You have you have an example of say cell phone. What are the metrics? So it has got so much of battery, 1500 milliampere hour battery. It has got touch screen as a user interface. It has got 1.8 gigahertz performance, frequency. It has got user safety. It can able to upgrade the software. All those things you are going to consider while designing a cell phone. The same thing holds good for any embedded system. Let's look into these design metrics one by one. First thing is power dissipation, because if it is battery operated, then we should look for low power modes, ultra low power modes, sleep modes and all other things. If it is directly connected to power sockets, for example, you are going to connect refrigerator directly to power socket. So in that case, normally you do not worry about how much that particular microcontroller consumes. On the other hand, if you are trying to use a remote, if you are trying to use electronic toys and many other battery operated your tablets and the other wristwatches, fitness bands, you could able to see that it is always, if you do not operate, within few seconds it will enter into sleep mode, because it is battery operated. So power dissipation matters there. So in those cases, normally we should consider when to consider, when not to consider. It is depends on the type of the supply. Even there are we discuss about what are the different types of power sources that we can able to connect. Those who are absent, you can able to see the recordings later. I am going to share the recordings on Google Classroom. Then comes performance. Performance means how fast it is, in simple words. For example, if it is, depends on the grade as well. Suppose if it is commercial, industrial, military grade, space, depends on that. The performance you have to consider how fast it should go. You should be able to do that measurement. You should be able to design that accordingly. Design the embedded system accordingly. Now you know that all your cell phones are operating around nearly 2 gigahertz, but not all the parts. Okay. If it is microcontroller based embedded system, normally we operate in terms of megahertz. So depends on the application. You can able to fix, okay, what is the performance, what is the how fast it is going to operate. Then comes deadlines. So performance and the process deadlines are connected to very closely, but process deadlines involved in how well your processes are managed, especially if it is real-time operating system. So how well you are going to meet the deadlines. Okay, how well you are going to meet the deadline. Suppose if I press a button Now it should respond immediately, or else I'm going to press continuously. If I press odd number of times, it will enter into off mode only all the time. So these are the problems associated with suppose if you are trying to operate the remote, probably you might have um, observed this thing. You are trying to press a 1051 as a remote channel number in the remote. Suppose if you enter 1051 and the particular digit, if it comes little late, what you do? 105, you are going to press 1123 times, and obviously end up in getting saying that this channel number is not available. So if it does not meet a particular deadline, so it has to respond within particular deadline, so the efficiency will automatically go down. Then comes user interfaces. User interfaces means what are the input and outputs. Inputs may be switches, buttons, keys, keypad matrix, touchscreen, maybe a sensor, maybe a thumbs reader in your cell phones, maybe a face recognition in your cell phones and any electronic gadgets, maybe any other. Then comes outputs, user outputs, where you could be able to feel like something is happening. First thing is a display, maybe an LED, maybe a 7-segment LCD, um, maybe other sophisticated things like displays. Then there may be some kind of relays and followed by drivers. Suppose if you just want to come and stand in front of the camera, you just want to open the gate. The gate may open, and it is also an interface. Okay, it will give you some kind of light and it will open. Okay, these are the inputs and outputs. Then comes size. Size is the serious matter even when it comes to portable design. For example, I already discussed this thing in the last class as well. I'm going to give you a cell phone, which is 10 times faster than this, having 10 times more features than this particular cell phone, but which is going to weigh about 1.5 kilogram, 1.5 kg. Are you willing to purchase that cell phone? Since it is 1.5 kg, none of you are going to wish to purchase it. Size matters. Suppose you are trying to design something for a spaceship. If you are trying to reduce 0.5 kg in whole embedded system box, you are going to save in terms of thousands and millions of dollars, because it costs so much for each and every kg to transport into space. It costs so much. So that is one thing. Size matters in many other these things, embedded system, and in most of the electronics systems. Then comes engineering cost. Engineering cost is also called as NRE cost, non-recurring engineering cost, also called as non-recurring engineering cost, which is the cost involved in designing hardware and software. It is one time cost. That is why it is called as NRE cost, which is probably the highest cost involved in the design process. Then comes manufacturing cost, which is normally we are trying to do mass manufacturing. In that case, manufacturing cost per unit will be reduced compared to prototype cost. Okay, it will drastically reduce the manufacturing cost because you are trying to manufacture in mass in terms of lots. Okay, then comes flexibility. Flexibility doesn't mean that it should be it should bend like rubber. That is not the flexibility. We are not talking about the physical flexibility. We are talking about how well you can able to intervene in between and trying to change the things. For example, uh, uh, we can able to upgrade our smartphone software in just on the fly. Just connect to internet and it will download itself, and then you can able to upgrade that OS, what we normally called as software, within an hour, which is the flexibility that is involved. If any bugs are there, you can able to upgrade it. If it comes to physical hardware flexibility, normally you might have heard that it is the particular cell phone having 16 GB storage but expandable up to 64 GB. What does it mean? It has that flexibility. Instead of 16 GB, you remove the 16 GB card and you can insert 64 GB card, memory card. That means it is flexible. That means it is flexible for upgradation. Similarly, there are many other things which are flexible. Then comes prototype development time. Time involved in developing the first prototype, first product. Okay. From idea to prototype, what is the time involved, which will definitely affect the overall time to market, which is there in the next part. Time to market, I think I have explained in the earlier classes with this diagram. So I'll make it so probably you know this diagram, time to market diagram. So these are the two triangles. Y-axis is profit, x-axis is time, and this triangle is the profit triangle. Okay. Suppose your target is here, but you delayed a particular product release by so much delay, say maybe 1 month. So you are going to lose this much profit. So every electronic has a peak profit time. Since you delayed by so much time, you are going to lose so much. You are going to lose this much. So this is time to market strategy, because there will be many competitors in the market. So you should target particular time to market time and you should launch in that. That is why they call it as software or hardware. They are calling it as deadline everywhere. So deadline to reach the time to market time. So you then comes user safety. Maybe 2-3 years back, probably you might have heard about cell phone company where it took back 2-3 lots of cell phones because of the safety concern. It is reported around few maybe 5 to 10 cell phones of the Samsung exploded due to battery issues. So they took explosion means it was a safety concern. they took the whole thing, whole lot of cell phones back, and they reissued new upgraded version of the cell phone for the same cost. So this is the safety measurement, especially safety measurements involved in many day-to-day, for example, washing machines. As soon as you turn on that washing machine, and if you load the washing machine and if you hit start, it will lock itself. You cannot open because if you open, it is not safe. And especially in the elevators, lift, what we normally call, they should not open anywhere. Yes or no? This is a safety concern. If it opens, and probably you might have heard these incidences in the newspapers, and it opens and there is no door, there is no car inside the elevator, and somebody blindly enters and died or injured due to such situations. So safety measure is one major things in embedded systems. So if it is not safe, you should not launch it. You should make, or you should ensure that it is safe, and then you should launch it. So at this point, I declare that this chapter is over. If you have any doubt, we will be discussing in the next session. Now we move to another topic, next topic, that is next chapter, chapter number 5, communication standards for embedded systems. Standards you can also call as protocols. Since almost all are buses, we can normally call as buses only, communication bus or bus protocols or bus standards. So at this point we'll start up with simple protocols like I2C protocols, then we can go ahead with SPI and CAN, Ethernet and other protocols. Let's go ahead and start with the overview of this. USB, I think we forgot on USB. I2C or I squared C, because it is IIC, that is why it is called as I2C. Okay. Then other standard that we are studying in this chapter is SPI, Serial Peripheral Interface, which is much more faster than I2C protocol. We'll talk about comparison between these. Then comes Universal Serial Bus. Every one of you are using USB in day-to-day, starting from charger to connecting USB thumb drives or pen drives, and from PC to any communication, you have USBs nowadays. Then comes Ethernet, that we are using for internet connections. Then comes CAN, Controller Area Network. Normally your day-to-day you are using it in automotive vehicles, car and many other places. Or what I already told, car itself is not an embedded system. Embedded system can be a part of the larger system. So in that case, CAN used in the car or automotive vehicles fall under embedded system category. CAN used in embedded system, which is in turn used in vehicle. Okay, so this is how you should be able to declare it. Okay, so let's start with I2C protocol or inter-integrated circuit, also called as I2C or I squared C. If you see this, probably this logo I2C, I2C is developed by NXP in 1982, and they have upgraded it around 5 to 8 times seriously, and earlier it was a patent, and slowly they made it product. And what are the products and what type of things which are required for where all you require I2C, we are going to discuss, and we have 2 3 peculiar things, so I'll take up each and every one. So these things are low speed peripheral ICs, okay, not high speed. So till now, the highest speed available for I squared C is around 5 megabits per second. Normally we are operating around 100 kilobits or 400 kilobits in microcontroller based network. And the other thing is, it is uh, meant for short distance microcontrollers and peripherals. And intra board, especially you have this intra board, means within the board, within the PCB you are trying to communicate, okay, it is used in such. And it is multi master, multi slave. So here there is a master and there may be many slaves, and even there can be uh, many masters as well, but normally we have one master and many slaves. And then packet switch, we are trying to send it packet by packet. It is single ended, and I can say clearly that it is half duplex. At any given point of time you can able to get the data from the slave or send the data to slave. Okay, it is a serial communication, no doubt in this. It is a serial communication. Now let's get into the structure of I2C protocol, and I just ensure that it is being recorded. Okay, so in this, the structure involved in just 2 lines. You require only 2 lines. One line is called as SDA, which is the data line, serial data line. Another line is called as SCL, which is serial clock. Okay, there are only 2 lines required. Hope you understood this. Only 2 lines required. 2 wires are required. If it is within the PCB, only 2 PCB lines are required. Okay, and these are normally pulled up to VDD. VDD can be 5 volt or 3.3 volt. Earlier it was 5 volt standard. Now it became 3.3 volt. And then comes how exactly it works, and how many slaves we can able to connect, the important question. So there are 2 modes, 7-bit and 10 bit. What are the possible combinations of 7 bit? Possible combination is 128. Theoretically we can able to connect 128 slaves, but practically around 122 slaves we can able to connect. If it is 10 bit, theoretically we can able to connect 1028 slaves we can able to connect. Practically we can able to connect around 1008 slaves, but normally we are not going to connect those many slaves. We are going to connect around handful of slaves, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5, not more than that in real time. So this is the structure of I squared C. Next thing, sir, how exactly it works? So each slave has got a particular address. Okay, each slave has got particular address. In 7-bit mode, the address line is of 7 bit plus 1 bit is read write, total 8 bits. In 10 bit address will be there. Okay, so normally for simplicity we consider as 7 bit. Also I am trying to explain 7 bit with 7 bit only we are trying to explain the things. So first it will I have videos and many other things for my support. As I already told, the protocol means set of rules. First rule I already told. Second rule is only master can initiate the transfer. Only master normally microcontroller. Only microcontroller can initiate the data transfer, not the slave. Okay, this is one thing. Microcontroller only initiate. Slave cannot initiate. Then comes can we read and write? Yes, we can both read and write. We have a particular bit called read write bit. So all these bits, since it is serial, we are trying to send, and it is synchronous communication. The earlier slide, I think I forgot to tell about synchronous. So it is synchronous communication because since we are trying to send the data in serial, there must be some account how many bits we send. So that can be accounted with only if you have synchronous communication. So with respect to clock, we are trying to send the data and we are trying to receive the data. If you do not have these clocks all the time, in other communications like RS-232 and many others, we have baud rates. That is also serial communication. We have something called baud rate. So we do not have baud rate here. We have serial clock, and with respect to clock, all the communication will happen. Now, how communication happen? That is first thing. So we'll go back to this diagram. Initially, we discussed about pull-ups. Either these two, based on the modes of I2C. Modes nowadays I2C have different modes: slower mode, ultra slow mode, fast mode, ultra fast. So depends on the speed. The resistance value will be different. It varies from 2 kilohertz to 10 kilohertz. So these pulled up means by default these SDA and SCL lines are 1, logic 1. Now come to working. So these two are logic 1. Okay. These two are initially logic 1. When master would like to communicate to a particular slave, so what it does, it checks for the activity, because there may be many masters. If If any other master is trying to communicate with any other slave, it is not going to disturb. So it is trying to pull down. Okay, if it is already pulled down, that means the bus is engaged. So assume that it is only one master and many slaves. So then what happens? It is trying to pull down. Okay, it is trying to pull down. So it is trying to pull down that line by making it 0. And when it is pulled down during SCL is high, automatically it will start the communication during the next low clock. Okay, during the next clock, this is the clock 1, clock 2, clock 3. Okay, sorry, this is not the clock 3, this is clock 3. Clock 1, clock 1, clock 2, and so on, clock 3, 4, 5, 6, and clock n. Suppose if it is 7-bit mode, n will be 7. Also plus 1 bit will be there, that is read write bit. If it is 1, it is read. If it is 0, it will be write. So either you can read or write. So once if you understand how exactly it works, we'll go to example. First I think we would have taken examples, and then why we need I2C protocols and other protocols. You have some clear vision, but actually we are doing it reverse here. I think just I forgot to talk about examples. So I will take the examples little later. Just concentrate on the protocol now. So as soon as it pulls down, so first it is going to send the address. First 8-bit will be address plus read write. Okay, it is going to send the address. Since there are many slaves, okay, what happens? The address will be sent to slave 1, slave 2, slave 3. So this initial address will be received by all slaves, and it will match with its address. So all the slaves will try to match the address, and as soon as it matches with particular address, for example, it matches with ADC in this case. So it is going to acknowledge by pulling it down. Okay, so then comes acknowledgement, and as soon as it gets the acknowledgement, the transfer continues, read or write. Since if it is some complex memories and many other things, it is also in the second part, it is also going to send in which address it is going to read or write. So that we'll talk a little later. So these are the two examples that I am trying to discuss. Suppose you have an E2 ROM connected outside the microcontroller. You want to store the permanent data there. Then you are trying to, how you can able to make it, since only 8 pins are there. How you are going to send 8-bit data there? So in that case, serial communication is very much useful. So what can be done? Only 2 pins are sufficient for SCL and SAD, SCL and SDA, and then one VDD and ground. So remaining pins are can be used for any other purpose. So in this case, what will happen? You have say memory of some megabytes or kilobytes, but you are just using only 2 lines of the microcontroller. Is it wonderful or not? It is very much useful, because you are going to use only 2 two pins of the microcontroller. Very much advantageous. Consider the other example, 16-bit ADC connected outside. 16-bit ADC. Suppose if you connect it without I2C protocol, you need 16 pins of the microcontroller, believe it or not. 16 pins of the microcontrollers required to read the ADC output, which is impractical. 16 pins we cannot invest, because nowadays microcontrollers are coming with 16 pins. So in that case, we can invest only 2 pins using I2C protocol, and we can get 16-bit results in serial communication. So these are the two ways, two examples that I wanted to share. Now comes the examples and animations. I just wanted to show you how exactly things work. So this is the one that I wanted to show you. Say here it is clearly mentioned when it is going to read, when it is going to write. This is initially high, and then it is going to pull down, and these are the initial data, and we have some beautiful animations here, and that I am going to show you. So initially, assume that slave 1 is trying to communicate. So what exactly it does? So initially high, and then it will be pulled down. So now communication started, it is low, and it is sent to both. Now address will be sent, read write will be sent, address bit it is trying to send. So to both, serially, bit by bit, clock by clock, it is sending the address. 7-bit address we are talking about. As soon as it reaches A0 to A6, 7 bits, it is going to give the acknowledgement bit by pulling it down again. So it is going to send the address now. Once it is acknowledged, it is going to send the data now. So it is going to send bit by bit. As soon as 8 bits are sent, it has to acknowledge by pulling the SDA. It has to send the acknowledgement bit. It is not sending, actually it is simply pulling the address, and then it is going to give the P bit. P bit means normally we consider it as stop bit. Stop bit is nothing but you are trying to pull the release the bus. By default they will be pulled up. Okay, this is how it works. These are the videos that are available in the YouTube. You can search I2C animation, and you are going to get the complete animation. In the same way, if it is the second, if it is trying to send the data to second one, it is going to send the address to both. Slave 2 will acknowledge. Okay, slave 2 will acknowledge. Actually this transfer is happening at 400 kilo normally. For understanding, it is shown very slowly, and then as soon as it acknowledges, the data will be sent here to slave 2. So similarly, we can able to calculate what is the clock rate and all those things. And if it is complex, the peripherals like EEPROM and ADCs, these are going to hold the data simply by addressing the slaves. You cannot able to get the data because there are many locations you have data. So in that case you have to send the location address as well. So I am trying to take this example to show the second
About
variant
100 kilobits per
second variant of the I square C. In this, there are three sections. First, you are trying to send the address of the slave, and in the second portion, you are trying to send in which location of the slave you are trying to read or write. That is internal register address. Suppose you are trying to get the second location of the E square prom, you are trying to send the second location address, and then you are trying to send the data, send or receive the data, and then you have a stop bit or P bit. So this is how it works, and the same animation is given in this video. So you can also get the same video in the YouTube by searching I square C animation for better understanding. So this is how it works. So it got in 8 clocks. So here it is showing 1010, but actually these can be ones or zeros. The data can be 1 or 0. Initially it sent 7-bit device address, read write. In this then if it gets acknowledgement, if here it is mentioned like write is 1, read is 0. In some standards it is opposite. Earlier we discussed about read as 1, write as 0. Sometimes it is reverse in some peripherals. We'll go little ahead and we'll try to discuss. Then we'll try to send the device. First we send the device address, then we send in which address I want to read or write. Okay, and then from there you are trying to read or write. So this is how animation helps you to understand. Okay, you understood this variant. First you send the address, then you try to send the address of the location where you want to read or write. Okay, hope you understood these points. At this point we are going to stop. I think these are the two example gyroscope. Some standard gyroscope also trying to use I square C protocol, and with the help of animations, I think you there are many videos you can able to get. And at this point